And I'm going to say hi. I'm Lynn O'Connell. I'm board chair of Dining for Women, or Together Women Rise. I've already screwed it up, Wendy. Together Women Rise. Just for now, I'm the interim president and CEO. I'm thrilled to see each of you here tonight. Thank you for taking the time, particularly before the holiday weekend. And we've got three very exciting speakers that you're going to hear from tonight. Quickly, for anyone who might be new, Together Women Rise is a powerful community of women and allies dedicated to achieving global gender equality. We have hundreds of local chapters across the United States where members come together to learn about gender equality issues, give grants to organizations that empower women and girls in low-income countries, and possibly share a meal together, and build community to forge meaningful connections with each other and with women and girls around the world. This tonight is our monthly national webinar that is open to anyone who cares about and wants to learn more about what we do and about global gender equality. A quick review, and we're all probably experts now on Zoom, but if you go down to the left-hand corner of most devices, you'll see the mute button. And we ask when one of our speakers, Lisa or Monica, are speaking that you probably want to mute yourself. We will be having question and answers, of course, and you're invited to put things down the chat box. I think we've all found that in the lower center of the toolbar there, where we've been putting our name and where we're from. And then also, if you click up to view, you are able to click on speaker view or gallery view. Speaker view will give you a clear view of Lisa and or Monica when they're speaking tonight. Gallery view lets you see who else is here too. So without further ado, I am pleased to introduce this month's featured project, which is Global Pearls in Cameroon. The primary goal of this project is to change the culture of gender-based violence, and specifically child rape, found in Cameroon. This country has a high incidence of gender-based violence, and the COVID-19 pandemic and the ongoing civil war are causing rates to skyrocket. First, we're going to watch the video about Global Pearls together, and then I will introduce our speaker tonight.
I was raped as a child. For 24 years, I stayed silent and angry. Prior to the rape, I was a top student, held as a role model for other daughters in the community, full of self-confidence. But my rapist took all that away from me. He made me feel dirty, stupid, inferior, and I didn't tell my story to anyone for 24 years. But when the Anglophone crisis hit Cameroon and towns were flooded with young IDPs who escaped the terrible violence in their communities, I couldn't stay silent any longer. These young girls were homeless, powerless, and tired, and they were being victimized by men who took advantage of their vulnerability. In telling my story publicly, I not only found healing for myself, I found myself a mentor for so many other women who had suffered similar experiences. The organization I founded and currently run, Rescue Women Cameroon, addresses many forms of violence and injustices against women. Recently, child rape has been skyrocketing, and even infants and toddlers are victims. So, my volunteers and I planned our first Girls Against Rape camp. But children find it difficult to fight rape. We are organizing this program for these little children to enable them understand what rape is all about, how they can identify a rapist, how they can stop a rapist from coming towards them, and how they can speak out when they are survivors of rape. To create an atmosphere of trust, we decided to revive our traditional culture by introducing Cameroonian sports, games, and songs that are unknown amongst younger generations. This created a fun environment, developed team spirit, and put the children in a relaxed state that fostered learning and sharing. During the education portion of the camp, we had survivors, experts, and social workers instructing and guiding discussions with the goal of protecting girls from rape. The children were amazed when I told my own child rape story, and this broke down the barriers of shame that so many victims carry. One teenage girl told me that she had been raped by a cousin at age 5 and hadn't told anyone. Importantly, we made sure what we were doing was broadcasted on local TV and radio, so we could impact a much larger audience. Kumba was buzzing with excitement over our camp. Everyone was talking about it, men and women both, and it left the Kumba population in awe. Our country has been so indoctrinated by a culture of gender-based violence that boys grow into men honestly believing that violence against women is not only their right but their obligation. Talking openly in the broader community about this taboo subject and the legal rights of women is creating a real stir, and we believe it will impact the views that men and boys have about gender-based violence and influence their behavior. The biggest surprise for me was that the older girls at our camp eagerly asked if they could start Girls Against Rape clubs at their schools so they could share the teachings with other girls. I did not see that coming. These clubs will not only extend the lessons to more school children, but they will create ongoing supportive social groups so girls will not need to navigate the dangers of childhood alone. Already, child rape victims are approaching our camp participants for help, and our children even stopped a potential gang rape of a 9-year-old by quickly reaching out to us for help. Another 7-year-old informed us of a classmate who was being raped, so we could intervene.
One of my friends has been raped in our school. She's in class 2. She's 7 years old. And we are the first station that she started crying. And I told her everything that is not her fault.
What particularly delighted us was the reaction of Kumba parents who learned about the camp over the TV and radio. These parents expressed their anger to us, anger that their own daughters hadn't been included in our camp. We could see we needed to do more of these camps. And your Together Women Rights Grant will allow us to do just that.
Wow, great video. Thank you. I am pleased now to introduce Lisa Spader. Lisa has a degree in international economics and economic development. She combined a career at Intel Corporation as a planner for their global factories with work on the side for international nonprofits. Eventually, she retired early to focus exclusively on economic development projects in developing countries. 5 years ago, she co-founded Global Pearls to incorporate everything she had learned over the years. The goal was not only to maximize the impact of each dollar invested in marginalized communities, but also to have fun while doing it. Thank you, Lisa, for being here.
Thank you. It's unfortunately that McKinty can't be here, but it's middle of the night for her, so I'll do my best. I thought maybe what I could do is tell you a little bit about Global Pearls and where we fit into the picture. So when I was working on international development projects for other organizations, I realized that almost every nonprofit, international nonprofit, has a particular type of project that they like to focus on. Maybe it's girls' education or maternal mortality or organic agriculture, whatever. And then they do that project that's passionate to them in a community or multiple communities, and they do an enormous amount of good. They're very, very valuable in what they do. But we also found that we kept meeting incredibly dynamic, amazing locals who also had a passion to help their communities, and they couldn't get any funding. And so we decided there was a need for a nonprofit that didn't feel the need to implement their own projects, but to empower locals who were very passionate about a particular project. So that's why we started Global Pearls. And our primary job is to select people like Nikinti, people that are just dynamic, intelligent, resourceful, passionate about helping their communities, that really could have a huge outside size impact if they just received a little mentorship and funding. And so that's what we do. We select people and really empower them to make a difference in their communities. And Nikinti is a perfect example. She is so different from every other Cameroonian woman I have met. Most Cameroonian women are very withdrawn and shy. Nikinti is not the least bit shy. When we first started partnering with her, we started by doing girls scholarships. Actually, her organization, their entire annual budget was maybe $300 to $500 per year before they started partnering with us. And she focused on giving educational scholarships to girls. So we started, when we first started working with her, we just were going to expand her girls scholarship program. At that time, we were working in the forest communities of Western Cameroon. Those are all rebel controlled areas now that the war has broken out. So we had to shift away from there, but this was just as the war was starting to break out. And they have no communication. There's no electricity or running water or cell phone service or anything. So messages are sent by motorbike or trekkers to the villages. And so we sent these messages out that if there were some girls who wanted secondary school scholarships to show up in Toko on certain dates to apply. Well, amongst the many girls that applied, there were 4 girls who had trekked for 3 days through the jungle one way. So 6 days round trip from their village to apply for a scholarship. And that really intrigued me. What made these girls so passionate about getting an education that they would trek for such a long distance? So on my first trip there, I told Nikinti, I want to do that trek, but in reverse. I want to visit the villages along the way, get to know the people, see what their lifestyle is like. And it was a fabulous trek. Fabulous as in I even had a little PTSD afterwards. So you can, interesting is probably a better word. But one of the things that really struck me, I mean, there were so many things that struck me. I have traveled and worked all over the world in third world countries. And this was a culture shock even to me, so many of the things that I encountered there. But one thing that really struck me was the men all believe that in order to show their wives that they love them, they need to beat them. And so each of it, when I first heard that, it's like, you got to be kidding. And so each time I went into a village and I'm chatting with people and I'd say, I heard that Oroka men think that they need to beat their wives to show their love. Do you feel that way? Oh, yes. All the men agree. Every place I went, there wasn't a single man that disagreed with that. There also wasn't a single woman who did agree with that. And it just was interesting to me how women were devalued in that culture. And one of the reasons why the girls that I encountered, usually, if a white woman shows up in a new area where they're not used to seeing white women, the children are very shy at first, but I tend to joke around and tease, and little by little, I'm able to get them to relax and open up and have fun. I just could not get through. They were just so scared. They could barely answer one-word answer questions. So that's why I say Nakinti is so different from the other females that I met there. But I think that they just come from a culture where they're treated so badly that they were afraid they might give me the wrong answer and what would happen to them. And so I just developed this passionate heart for the women of Cameroon. It's not just the gender-based violence that is clearly a huge issue there, but maternal mortality in these jungle villages. So we ended up doing a pilot there, and we chose the worst villages in our area. And I just did a rough estimate. There were probably one maternal death for every 10 to 15 pregnancies in those villages. They had no medical care other than for traditional midwives who knew nothing about modern medicine. They believed that if a woman dies in childbirth, they obviously were practicing witchcraft and the witches came and killed them. So they know nothing about hemorrhaging or any of the basic causes of maternal mortality. And so life for women in Cameroon is really very difficult. Obviously, you heard Nakinti tell her story. She was a victim of child rape when she was young, and she bottled it up inside for many years. So as the project started to grow, and especially when the Anglophone crisis hit, so a lot of young people were leaving the forest communities and settling on the outskirts of towns. It was like these slum communities built up on the edges of the towns like Kumba, where we're doing this project. And they had come from agricultural environments. They didn't have skills other than agricultural skills. So the only way they could survive, the young women would turn to prostitution, the young men would turn to crime oftentimes, and they were living in very congested environments where multiple families were housed together, and parents would often have to be gone all day long trying to, scrape up some money in the informal market. So children were left unsupervised, unprotected, and the child rape just became a bigger and bigger problem because of it. And it just broke Nakinti's heart. And she just decided she really had to do something. And so she decided to start these child rape camps. And we just did one pilot last year to see how it went. Some of the video is a little bit fuzzy because we didn't decide to apply to Together Women Rise for a grant until after the pilot was done. And so in order to get video footage for our video, we was like, okay, did anybody take any videos on their cell phones? And you'll notice some of the scenes were very crisp and clear because someone had a good phone, and other of the scenes, it was very old technology. They might have taken it vertically and we had to crop it horizontally. So it was, some of the scenes were pretty blurry, but I think the story still came through. And it went really better than our wildest imagination. The girls were so excited. They went back to their schools. They started Girls Against Rape clubs because they were so excited about what they had learned in the camp. They wanted to share what they had learned with all of their friends at school. Parents were incredibly appreciative. The one message that we kept getting was, you need to do our boys too, not just our girls. Our boys need to hear these messages. So thankfully, Together Women Rise has agreed that we're going to be doing 4 rape camps each year for 2 years. And one of the 4 camps each year will be for boys, and the other 3 will be for girls. So we're spreading the message through radio and TV, through the clubs at the schools. We also have another funder that is funding a conference every year for very motivated women from all over Cameroon to come and learn and be empowered to go out and start their own projects. So we did that this last February, the first one. And they kind of formed groups depending on where they were from, and 4 new projects sprang up around Cameroon. One is really focused on dealing with the boys and the men in the community. They used soccer and, big names in soccer to try to attract boys and have public discussions. And another group is focusing on orphanages because orphans are very vulnerable. Another group has focused on doing teachings in houses of worship, so churches and mosques. And a fourth one is working in the French-speaking part of Cameroon. But it's just really exciting to see how it's not just the one child rape camp, but it's spreading, the work is spreading all over Cameroon because her passion is really empowering others. Our passion is empowering her, but her passion is empowering other women so that they can spread the work. And she actually, while the child rape camp was going on, she was contacted by multiple women in other countries in Africa saying, is there a way that we can, attend this virtually because we want to learn and we want to do this in our own country. And so we're hoping that during the child rape camps that RISE is funding, we'll be able to get some video footage and create some, we didn't have the capability to have people, attend virtually, but we thought, well, maybe we can create a written curriculum and some videos to go with it so that they can take that and start their own projects in other countries. So we're kind of excited about the potential of this project to finally start, eating at some of the cultural, very deep-seated cultural practices that are harmful to women in Cameroon and maybe eventually across Africa. Any questions?
So please everyone put your questions in the chat. There is already one here, Lisa. It is, what are some examples of the programs offered at the camps?
Well, mostly they talk about what rape is. A lot of children, especially the younger children, don't even know what rape is. They don't know. So a lot of the young children become victims because they don't understand that what's happening to them is wrong until it's too late. And then they're scared that they can't tell anybody because, especially in this culture where there's a lot of gender-based violence, they're afraid if they say something, they're the ones who are going to get beaten. So a lot of it is teaching them about what rape is, how it's not the girl's fault, it's not about what you wear, that you should speak up, these are your rights, these are some things that you can do in order to protect yourself, you need a safety network. And so they teach the children, they give them various different strategies for how to protect themselves, how to help advocate for other friends that they might have that are in danger or have been raped. And so it's just a wide variety of lessons that they learn each day in the camp.
It looks like they combine quite a bit of fun with it as well. What we saw in the video with the dancing and sports and things like that, is that all part of it as well?
Yeah, so they're trying to revive, if you chose a sport that some people know, like soccer, some people who have played it would be at an advantage to some who haven't, or the bigger girls at an advantage to the younger girls. So, and Nikindi thought to revive some of their traditional culture that has really been disappearing. So these games are new to all the children. And so they're all having a lot of fun learning from scratch. And it just, the idea is to just create a fun atmosphere so they feel comfortable sharing. If it's too formal, children feel uncomfortable and they're not as likely to learn or to share. And so they really work hard to try to make it a fun and relaxed atmosphere so the children feel safe.
And what age are the girls that attend the camps?
Oh, I knew this. The youngest are 5. I think it goes from 5 to 15.
Great. There's a number of other questions here. Is rape preceded by grooming young girls? Deb, I wonder if you could maybe elaborate on that a little bit.
I think I know, well, she can elaborate. I think I know what she's asking, but.
Sure. Oh, great.
So I think in the American culture, the grooming is, a male will spend some time, gradually working up to rape, and that's sort of the grooming. This is really a better question for Nikinti. It's too bad she's not here, but from what I understand, because men feel like it's their right to rape, I mean, that's one of the reasons why this gang rape we were able to stop, because the guys were planning it openly. They weren't even trying to hide it. And so I think that there isn't a sense that the child needs to be groomed. They just rape right off the bat. With Nikinti, her situation, her rapist was a man who worked with her father at the company that he worked at. And he said, "Oh, I have a letter for your father. Come, let me give you the letter." And so she came in to get the letter for her father. Of course, it was a lie. There was no letter, and brutally raped her. Her uniform was torn, blood was streaming down her legs. I mean, and so it was just, there was no grooming. It was just a vicious attack. And of course, she said nothing, because in that culture, girls don't feel like they can say something. So no, I don't think they groom. Typically, they don't groom them, I don't think.
What reaction to this prevention program what reaction do you get from the men who are the rapists?
Well, I don't know about the rapists, but the men have been very supportive of the program too, at least the ones, I mean, the rapists probably don't say anything or stay away, but a lot of men said, our boys need this too. Fathers of the children, some fathers found out that their child had been raped and they had no idea prior to this that their child had been raped, and they were really upset, and they're like, we need to get this out, we need to do this program for more people. So the men were I haven't heard a report yet from the team that is focusing exclusively on boys and men. I'm really eager to hear how that went. Within another couple of weeks, I should have a report, and you can follow up with me, and I can let you know. I think that I'm hoping, I don't know if this is a think or a hope, but I'm hoping that men are at least stopping to think, what, this isn't okay, and are at least questioning. No one has come angry. So either they're hiding their views or they're coming out supportive. But it'll be interesting to see what this other team experienced when they focused exclusively on boys and men.
Absolutely. And I mean, it has to be done with the girls and the boys for anything to change, really.
Yeah. And one of the things that Nikinti is really stressing, especially amongst the adults that she works with in the conference that they're trying to spread, is that if you stay quiet, they get away with it. And so what she did with her rapist is because there's a huge online presence in a lot of developing countries. It's very popular to Facebook. And, I think in America, it's getting less popular here, but in developing countries, it's a huge popular social media. And people are starting to come out on Facebook and calling out their rapists, which shames the rapists. And so there's no real police support in terms of prosecuting rapists, but women are now using social media to shame their rapists. And that we are hoping is going to have an impact, even if, jail time isn't there as a threat.
Well, that leads right into this last question that we have, which is in regards to prosecuting the rapist. Are there any laws, or does anything at all happen?
The laws exist, so that's one good thing, but they never get applied, or almost never get applied. I know this one woman who was a volunteer, or is a volunteer with Nikinti. She was gang raped when she was a college student. Very, very brutal. 4 men drug her, beat her for hours, then drug her out of her apartment, gang raped her in a park, left her for dead. She was in a hospital for over a month because of her injuries. And the police didn't do it. You know, she told the police, but they just kind of laughed it off and didn't do anything, did not investigate, nothing. And so there really at this point is very little support from the police. The laws are there, but they're not enforced. And so that's why the women are turning to social media shaming. And hopefully that will be a start of the change of culture.
Wow.
Thank you, Lisa. Very informative. Really, really interesting to hear the huge differences in culture and to see the impact the project's making. So thank you for sharing.
You are so welcome. Thank you for having me.
And so now I get to introduce one of our projects that's been around a bit. Together Women Rise has had a long history of partnering with Collateral Repair Project in Jordan. We first awarded them a featured grant in 2015 in order to establish a women's leadership and wellness program for Iraqi refugee women. This year, we are completing a $75,000 three-year sustained grant that allows Collateral Repair Project to extend its support model to refugees from Syria, Sudan, and Yemen, as well as from Iraq. Once again, we will share the video and then we will hear from Monica, our speaker.
Much has changed since 2015 when we first got our Dining for Women grant. We were really small back then. We just had a couple of rooms in our center, and we now are on multiple floors over 2 buildings, and we have a staff of around 30 people from the local community. What was so great about the Dining for Women funding was that it allowed us to do our very first program. It allowed us to begin training women on women's leadership principles and women's rights and human rights in general. We started with just a small group of women who had demonstrated leadership skills in our community, and we trained them actively over an extended period of time, and then they became facilitators to begin expanding that training to larger numbers of women.
التغيير على حالتي النفسية، إنه أنا كنت دائما منفعلة، دائما عصبية. دخولي هذه الدورة حسيت بتغيير جدا كبير، إنه خاصة على عائلتي، على المجتمع، التعامل مع الناس من حولي، خلاني أقدر إنه أثبت وجودي، إنه أتمكن، إنه أكتشف من قدراتي، إنه أقدر أساعد نفسي وعائلتي، إنه أكون أكثر قوية بالمجتمع، خاصة كوني امرأة وبمجتمع عربي مثل مجتمعنا.
That work is still continuing today, and those very first training workshops that we held are now a core part of our programming. We've been able to expand to do much more through advocacy activities, as well as income generation, also really focusing on girls. CRP is really unique in Jordan because we're one of the only organizations to be working on gender-based violence with men and boys. And this is really something that grew out of our work with Dining for Women. What's different now is that we have a real need to be able to bring on quality middle management that can ensure that this core programming will be able to be maintained and will be able to continue to grow and expand and serve more people. The other big challenge is that the crisis really isn't over. The media has moved on from the Syria crisis, but it's definitely not over. We have more challenges than we've ever had as funding has moved on and as new groups like Yemenis move into Jordan and are desperate to receive help. We're just so grateful to Dining for Women for providing us funds to make sure that we're able to keep doing this really important work.
Wow, thank you. What a growth collateral repair project has had since I last I remember reading about them on the GSC. At any rate, my pleasure now to introduce Monica Greco. Monica is the chair of Collateral Repair Projects Board of Directors, helping to guide the organization's strategic direction and oversight. Monica previously served as the board treasurer and before that, the operations director. By day, she's a program officer at Open Society Foundations, where she leads work at the intersection of technology and migration. Before joining Open Society Foundations in 2017, Monica's career spanned finance, economic development, in displacement contexts and refugee aid. She holds a BA from Princeton University and a master's degree from the University of Oxford and is a Fulbright Fellow. And I'm pleased to welcome Monica tonight.
Thanks so much, Lynn. It's a pleasure to be here. And thanks also for the introduction. I'm here, I'm calling in from Brooklyn also because it's quite late in Jordan. So Amanda's joined us in that video, but we'll spare her the late evening or early morning visit with you all. And so as Lynn said, I started with CRP in 2013, so it's been quite a while now. And the situation has changed a lot since then, but in a lot of ways it stayed the same. And CRP, in fact, just to give you a little bit more background, it was started in 2006 by two American women who were seeking to build a connection between Americans and others, and also Iraqis who had fled to Jordan as a consequence of the war. And over the years, in large part, thanks to you and your ongoing support, we've really expanded, and that growth has just been critical. And so what we do now, and something that we've done now for years too, is to foster community and dignity in refugee neighborhoods. And we do that by ensuring that basic food and housing needs are met. And so that means providing basic assistance to hundreds of families through in-kind aid, information and referral services, but also monthly food vouchers and cash assistance. That's been at the core of what we've done for years. And the idea here is that refugee families can purchase fresh produce and groceries for their families. As the video, as Amanda explained in the video, we serve refugees and people in need of all nationalities. So we're nationality blind. We started serving Iraqis, expanded to Syrians, they're Sudanese, Yemeni, et cetera, and also Jordanians in need. And even the fact that we serve everybody is something that makes us unique. But maybe something you got a sense for in seeing that short video is that something else that makes CRP special is the relationship that we have with the beneficiaries that we serve. The community centers, and now we have more than one, it's a place where before COVID, I should say, many refugees spent their days. And it's because of that's why we have this kind of relationship with our beneficiaries. And many of them also become volunteers or staff and leaders in the community. And that's something that we, try to foster as well. And so that sort of special environment is what drew me to CRP in the first place. And at the time, as Amanda said, we were quite small, and I came on as our operations director then, and have been with CRP ever since, watching the organization grow. And I'll tell you about two projects in particular. The first and these have been really what your funding has supported. The first is the Hope Workshop, which was featured in this video. And then the second is what we call our Super Girls program, which works with elementary school age girls. But I mentioned this also to Lynn and Wendy before we started, but Dining for Women and now Together Women Rise has been a long-term partner for us, and it's something that we're really grateful for. And just since 2019, your support has allowed us to help, I think it's 2,400 individuals through youth and livelihood programs, and in particular the Hope Workshop, which has over 50 women, and I'll tell you more about that also. And I also wanted to just take a moment to thank you all for the support and the flexibility during COVID. So COVID for us, just like for everyone, has been really difficult, especially on the vulnerable families that we're working with. And so between March of 2020 and May of 2021, CRP was able to deliver 6,000 hours of online programming and more than 700 hours of one-to-one telephone outreach to the families that we work with. And so we managed to relatively quickly, I should say, deliver 30 different online programs. And in addition to that, so moving everything online, we were able to also continue and expand the basic emergency assistance that we were providing to families. And so now, Lynn mentioned that I sit at a funder now. I work at Open Society Foundations. And so different types of funding approaches is something that I think about a lot. And I'm so grateful for the approach that you all took also in response to COVID. Flexibility is what let us basically provide this response that we did. And just to give you a sense also of what the situation, the COVID situation in Jordan is like right now, at the moment, it's a bit better. So there was a very, very tight lockdown at the outset. You know, the government was sanitizing the streets, and that was relaxed. The numbers went up dramatically. In the spring, there was another big wave, and that's since come down. So right now, there's still an 11 p.m. curfew, social distancing, mask wearing, et cetera. But all in all, things are on the up and up, and vaccines are becoming more and more available. I should also say in Jordan, refugees have had access to COVID, to healthcare, which isn't the case everywhere. And so that's something that we're really grateful for also. And so, like I said, this flexible support and also your support through the years is something that I think a lot about in my own funding approach. Thinking back on when we were just a young organization, and I won't dwell on our institutional history because I know it's not nearly as interesting as the actual work that we do. But the kind of support that we got to kick off this programming was game changing, and the reason that we've been able to continue to develop this kind of rapport with the community. So thank you for that. And so I guess I'll go on then just to tell you a little bit about our Supergirls program, which is a holistic program for refugee girls, mostly between the ages of 6 and 12. And what we try to do is support academic and emotional development. So we want to make sure that girls don't fall behind, and we want to provide them with a toolbox of emotional tools that they need to process traumatic experiences, and then encourage them to remain in school and make their best effort. And so since 2019, we've had more than 150 girls graduate from that program. And it's only through this kind of programming, equipping young children with the skills and educations, that we can protect them and help them secure a better future. And so the kinds of activities that we have include different art activities, also meditation activities, and a lot of fun. And we found in particular that during the pandemic, this has given a lot of the children and the young girls that we work with a sense of security. And you know, something I'll say too is that this kind of holistic education is something that's valuable now, but the reason that we think it's so important also is because it's a tool to fight the child laborhood that we see in places like Jordan, and you know, to make sure that children can continue to be supported throughout this vulnerable stage of their lives. And so staying connected and feeling supported hasn't ever been harder, but we're happy to provide this space for our girls, even during the pandemic, so that they can develop healthy coping mechanisms for the pandemic and also the other issues that they're facing. And so maybe I'll switch over to the Hope Workshop, which you've now seen a little bit about. So I hope you have a good feel for it. But just a little bit of background. This was an independent artisanal goods cooperative, and I will pop the link to the products in the chat so that you can see the kinds of things that they make. And it developed really organically. This again was driven by our community in 2010. And it was in response to a need for creative income generating schemes. And so women and children in Jordan, women and children under 18 make up about 75% of Jordan's refugee population. And so we've always been very sensitive to their needs and responsive, and that's where the Hope Workshop came from. And so it's located in a dedicated women's only space within one of CRP's community centers. And as I said, we have 54 participants now who they started basically making handicrafts, and we were encouraging the learning and practice of basic skills, like, cutting, sewing, assembly, embroidery, and crochet. And today we have 4 handicraft groups that make all kinds of things. From handkerchiefs to these fantastic gnomes. I don't think you saw them in the video, but they're these really great gnomes that they make, and advent calendars, and a number of different products that are sold in local marketplaces, and then also online, and when possible in person at local bazaars in Jordan. And so something else that we've been thinking about for a long time, and in 2019, we were finally able to initiate, is the Hope Kitchen. And this is a 12-woman strong production kitchen that services internal and external catering requirements. So before the pandemic, this is the group of women who were making healthy snacks for participants in our youth programs. So providing snacks is a key part of our children's programming as well. They also catered for large internal events. They make granola bars for commercial sale, and they do full catering menus for private events. Unfortunately, it's only in Jordan, but they're fantastic. And COVID-19, again, I can't overstate the toll that it's taken on all of us. But we've tried our best to keep the women in the Hope Workshop and the kitchen engaged in online programming so that they'll be able to come back to production. And in this strict lockdown period, which was March to June, English classes, which is part of this also, were held virtually as an opportunity to develop English as a second language, both for personal and professional benefit. So and let me know if I'm going on too long here, so because I could go on about the Hope Workshop all day. But the women of the Hope Kitchen, they also participate in weekly cooking challenges from home during the holy month of Ramadan, and also over the Eid in May. And in July of this past summer, we began implementing a take-home work system to facilitate the transition of working from home. So there was a while when things hadn't quite moved home, but then we managed it. And working from home meant that it was possible to continue online production for the fall and winter seasons. So we have a lot of seasonal goods, like for Christmas and for Eid. And it also allowed us to reintroduce some of the energy and the joy that participants drew from investing their time in this kind of crafting. So we kept up this kind of production, and the women were able to participate in a number of holiday bazaars over the past year through Facebook. And I should say also, it was hard for families to continue to support themselves during lockdown, and this allowed women to continue to provide during these very, very bleak times. So we remain positive and to continue supporting our community. We're continuing to deliver these kinds of online programs during lockdowns and curfew to keep the community engaged. One other that I'll just mention, oops, sorry, that's my mom calling me. I'll call her back. But one other program that I'll mention also is the business skills training course. That's a new professional development opportunity that we're providing for the Hope Workshop beneficiaries now. And so this is built into the Hope Workshop program. And so the 54 women that make up the workshop now will be able to participate in these cohorts in the coming year. And this, again, will help them develop entrepreneurial business acumen, which a lot of them already have. And, it'll let them continue to grow these skills and keep at it. And I guess in closing, I'll just say that all of this is possible when we have people who care and who show that they care by supporting our community. And that's why I can't overstate how thankful we are for your support over the years. It's been game changing. So I'll leave it at that for the moment and take a couple questions.
Well, while we wait for people to put their questions in the chat, I don't want to put you on the spot, Lynn, but they're such a perfect example of what we're trying to do with our sustained grantee program, aren't they? Maybe talk about the importance of, how we view the sustained.
Okay. Thank you, Wendy. The sustained it's interesting. The featured grants are, of course, something that we as chapter members love, because we get to see and learn about certainly a new grant, a new program, a new country, but the sustained grants, and I myself, like Monica, I've worked in the nonprofit sector. I've been executive director of organizations for years, and I know how important the sustained funding is. As an organization like Together Women Rise, when we give funding that's multiple years, it not only allows an organization to start and slightly upscale, grow, they know they have the sustainability there and they do not have to worry. It also, of course, the impact that Together Women Rise has, then they can go to other funders and show, look, Together Women Rise, these 5,000 women strong believe in us. Will you possibly fund us too to keep the program going? So really for me, yes, Lisa, I love the new programs, but the sustained grant programs always resonate in my heart very much as I see them every year and see what new has happened.
There is a question in the chat. What are the chances, and this is something we always wonder with refugees, what are the chances that they will be able to return home or receive asylum and citizenship in Jordan?
Yeah, there's a short answer. The chances are slim. Resettlement is offered to an extremely small number of refugees. It's like single digits. And so that's something that everyone strives for. They wait for years, and the process, even when it does work, is a years-long process. Many also people, there is some traffic back and forth, even over borders. So I remember more so a couple of years ago, people used to go back to take their exams and then come back. And we do see people return. That's something, fundamentally, a lot of people just want to go home. And when there are opportunities to do that, parts of our community seize on that. But the reality is Jordan often feels like limbo. People are stuck. And for many years, often without the ability to work, because most sectors are not open for work permits for refugees. So it's a really difficult situation. And I think 5 years ago, as Amanda mentioned in the video, it's something that people really understood as an urgent issue. And now, the situation in a lot of ways is still the same, and things haven't improved, and it is as urgent, and these opportunities to resettle or otherwise just aren't available.
Another question is, I think you did mention something about advocacy. Are you able to do advocacy work, and does the UN Women support you at all? Does UN Women support you at all? Yes, and so I know we've partnered with UN Women, and I don't know the details of it. I have a couple of colleagues who've been closer to that. But we, in particular, on work with men on gender-based violence, that's something that we had a lot of conversation with UN Women about, and something that I think we actually played a role in inspiring them in working with men as a way to address these issues also. And advocacy is something that we've started to do recently. It's very difficult for organizations in Jordan to advocate, and certainly to be critical in certain ways. But it's something, particularly advocacy to different funders, to improving the situation broadly. It's something that very recently for us, like in the past, 2 years or so, we've started to do more to the extent that we can, also with international players and donors. And so that's a new muscle for us, but one that we're actually finding we're really well suited to do because of our proximity to the ground. People are increasingly coming to us for data. So specifically on, in Jordan, there's a distinction between refugees in the camps. So everybody hears about Zaatari and these other camps, but the reality is that the vast majority of refugees in Jordan are in urban settings. So they're in Amman, in the capital, where we are, in the community. And even the big NGOs, the government for that matter, they don't have as much of a grasp on what urban refugee populations look like, what their profile is, and also, specifically non-Syrian refugees. So there are a lot of agencies who have funding or just services dedicated to Syrians, but Iraqis less so, other national groups that end up in Jordan, less and less basically. And so that's a niche that we fill. Someone would like to know a little bit more about the programs that you have for men and boys.
Yeah, and we have a fantastic video about our programming with men also that I can dig up and send around too. And so, you know, men and boys are included in all of our programming. But in particular, I mentioned this gender-based violence work that we've been doing with men and boys. That also was pretty innovative and something that we started doing pretty early on and has expanded. And it includes a lot of the same tools that we use in our other programming. So meditation, mindfulness, wellness, and these sorts of things, in addition to broaching some of these difficult topics. And yeah.
That's great. And then the last question I have here is more related to the camps. And as you just explained, you're working with the urban refugees, the ones that are living right in Amman, not in the camps. But maybe you could comment on, do the refugee camps have their own schools? Do the kids stay on track with schooling? I'm suspecting the answer is probably no, but go ahead.
No, and that's right. So in the camps, various UN and other humanitarian aid agencies provide various educational services. And in the city, in some public schools, refugees can access the schools. A lot of them don't, for a variety of reasons. So child labor is something that I mentioned as an issue. A lot of people stay home for a number of reasons, including that refugees sometimes get bullied in school. So it can be very challenging to engage in that way. And for that reason, that's why we devote so much of our time to educational activities. We found that teenagers in our group, their literacy issues, numeracy issues, people really are behind in those ways. And we try to provide, after school homework help and things like that to help kids stay on track. Because it is, as Jessica probably suspected, it's a big problem.
Well, thank you, Monica, and thank you, Lisa. Yet again, another very fascinating and interesting evening. Learned many new things about both programs, and thank you for your great work, and thank you for taking the time this evening to share with us and our members. Few announcements. We have a few programs coming up in August. Our next national meeting will be that first Thursday in August, August 5th at 8 p.m. And we'll be having speakers from DREAM in the Dominican Republic and Gardens for Health in Rwanda. Then the following week on August 11th, we have a special book club event, a discussion with peace activist and Holocaust survivor, Irene Butter. And then we have our 2 August advocacy webinars with results at 7 p.m. on August 17th, and then at 9 p.m., I believe, on August 18th. To check these out and more, go to our website, click on upcoming events, and then click on join us, and you'll be able to see all the events and to sign up to get the Zoom link. And then, of course, watch for our togetherwomenrise.org emails. Again, thank you, and it's great to see all of you here tonight.